So, good morning to the dignitaries and participants. The function of education something critical. The goal of true education, that is the goal of true education. Swami Vivekananda says, we may read books, hear lectures, and talk miles, but experience is the one teacher, the one eye opener. It is the best as it is, but we learn through smiles and tears we learn. Yes, in the new education policy emphasizes mainly on experiential learning. To begin with, let us seek the blessing of Almighty. Now I request Rachana S from 7th semester Electronics and Communication Engineering to present an invocation song.
पार्वती नंदन नमो नमो पुण्य विभूति नमो नमो पार्वती नंदन नमो नमो पुण्य विभूति नमो नमो सर्वस्वरूपा सर्वकुमारा सर्वाधारा सर्वतीता पार्वती नंदन नमो नमो पुण्यविभूति नमो नमो त्रिमूर्तिवन्दिता पादकमला त्रिगुणातीता त्रही स्वरूपा समानरहिता सोमकलादर सङ्कटहरणा त्रिगुणाभरणा पार्वती नन्दन नमो नमो पुण्यविभूते नमो 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 Thank you.
Thank you, Rachna. So, with the blessings of dignitaries, I, Dr. Shaila K, Professor, Department of Electronics and Communication, and Vice President, VKIT IIC, continue to be the master of ceremony for today's event. With heartful reverend, I, on behalf of management of Janata Education Society and Vivekananda Institute of Technology, welcome the dignitaries and participants. Now, I request our beloved principal, Dr. D.V. Chandrasekhar sir, to formally welcome our guests.
Good morning, sir. Venugopal, sir.
Good morning, Chandrasekhar.
I am a student of Professor Rudraya.
Yeah, I know that.
I think you know that he also is. So I welcome you for this.
Yeah.
I think you know, sir. You know, I also knows when we were a principal of UC.
Yeah, he used to come.
Now I'm in charge principal of this VKT,
Okay.
sir.
All the best. All the best. Do well.
Last 4 months. So I'm working. Yeah.
Introduce.
I do this function, and also I welcome Dr. sir. And I request
You have a bandwidth
both of
problem.
you should give an uh, yeah. And also, because of the new education policy, request you to throw the light saying
Sir.
Hmm.
So India will be leading in the skilled education in 2021. National education policy is that awakening spark in 2021. It is my privilege to introduce today's chief guest of the day and my research guide, Dr. Venugopal K.R. Sir. Dr. Venugopal K.R. Sir is an IEEE Fellow and ACM Distinguished Educator for his contribution in the fraternity of computer science. He was the principal of University Visvesvaraya College of Engineering for 15 years. He has an distinguished and a brilliant academic career, 11 degrees, including 2 PhDs. He has served UVCE and Bangalore University for over the last 4 decades. He has received his ME degree in Computer Science Engineering from Indian Institute of Science,
Switch off the
Bengaluru.
video. Switch off the video, Shaila.
Bachelor of Engineering in Electronics and Communication from UVCE and has also obtained degree in law, journalism, public relations in referee. He has published 850 papers in refereed international conferences and journals. He has filed 56 patents and has been credited with 15 patents. He has established 2 engineering colleges and 2 schools in Bengaluru. Sir has awarded 29 PhDs and 700 MTech dissertations under his guidance. He was also the visiting faculty at South California, USA.
Switch off the video, Shaila.
He has been a leading Deccan light and role model for the teachers and students. So I was lucky to have Sir as my research guide, which has made me to become strong technically. Mm.
Switch off the
Technically,
video.
and
Yeah.
now I welcome you, sir, again.
Hmm.
Sir, I request you to address our participants and enlighten all of us, sir.
Good morning to all of you. I'm very happy that I'm sharing the dais with Professor Sandeep Shastri, who is a leading political scientist of the country, and my own student, Dr. Shaila, who has been organizing this program. We are talking about the National Education Policy 2020, and Shaila was talking about Swami Vivekananda. Education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. I say human being. That is Swami Vivekananda's great saying. Education is the cornerstone of traditionally known 4 pillars of the democracy: the executive, the legislative, judiciary, and press. It is one of the most important foundation for social, economic, cultural, and political reforms in the country. The National Education Policy 2020 is a transformative policy that addresses the gap in the present education system and seeks to reform them. It enables India to become Vishwaguru and as a global knowledge superpower in the near future. The new education policy embarks to instill a deep rooted pride in being Indian in thought, deeds, spirit, and intellect, as well as to develop knowledge, skills, values, and dispositions that support commitment to human rights, sustainable development, and living and global well being. One of the stated aims of policy is that education should migrate towards less content, more towards learning about how to think critically and solve problems, how to be creative and multidisciplinary, and how to adapt, absorb novel ideas, and innovate in a rapidly changing environment. It is a known fact that knowledge societies have always emerged as superpowers of the world, and NEP will achieve the dream for India. The NEP embraces the best of world practices and the traditional roots of the country. It is necessary to emulate Japan, Germany, USA, and South Asian models for education for its implementation. The NEP aims at aims that education must develop cognitive capacities, that is, foundational capacities of literacy and numeracy, and higher order cognitive capacities such as critical thinking and problem solving and social, ethical, and emotional capacities and dispositions. It envisages an ambitious and realistic goal for India to have a robust, second to none education system with equitable access to the highest. The hub and spoke model should be the basis for implementation of the NEP. Education should be learning centric, student centric, teacher centric, institution centric, research centric, culture centric, and technology and value centric. We should act locally like education in mother tongue, think nationally like model curriculum, and compete globally like product research. A paradigm shift is one of the most important things that we observe in the new education policy. One of the fundamental changes is the elementary education, where 10 plus 2 model has been replaced by 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 model, which strengthens early childhood education and schooling. The Right to Education Act 2009, instruction in mother tongue, shift in learning system, and introduction of skill based learning at school level. Intensive training of qualified Anganwadis will transform elementary education, developing cognitive capacities of foundational literacy and numeracy among children. Elimination of silos between arts and sciences, between curricular and extracurricular activities, between vocational and academic streams are hallmarks of NEP. The NEP higher education promotes interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, and transdisciplinary learning with emphasis on conceptual learning, critical thinking, and creativity with multiple exit and multiple entry programs. The NEP definition allows a spectrum of institutions ranging from those that place emphasis on teaching, skill, vocational, and research, that is, research internship, university, teaching intensive university, and autonomous institutions. The institutions could all evolve into research intensive with 75% research and 25% teaching, or teaching intensive universities and autonomous colleges with 75% teaching and 25% research. Pedagogy is one of the most important component of education. Teaching should be one third online, one third of physical classes, and one third of experiential learning. We have to establish Indian teacher services, Indian medical services, and Indian law services in order to groom vice chancellors and registrars both at administration and at evaluation level. Teachers Academy, Law Academy, Medical Academy should be created to groom teachers in higher education, including the members of the Board of Governing Council. We should inculcate lifelong learning, continuous learning, skilling, reskilling, and unskilling in teachers. The appointment of teachers should be on a war footing. to ensure that universities do not face challenges in imparting education to the students. The NEP aims that pedagogy must evolve to make education holistic, integrated, inquiry driven, discovery oriented, learner centric, discussion based, flexible, experimental, and enjoyable. The curriculum must include basic arts, crafts, humanities, games, sports, fitness, languages, literature, culture, and values in addition to science and mathematics to develop all aspects and capabilities of learners and make education more well rounded, useful, and fulfilling to the learner. They departments in languages, literature, music, philosophy, Indology, art, dance, theater, education, mathematics, statistics, pure and applied sciences, sociology, economics, sports, translation and interpretation, etc., have to be established and strengthened at all higher educational institutions. The engineering institutions will move towards holistic and multidisciplinary education with additional courses in arts and humanities. Students of arts and humanities will aim to learn more of science. Institutions need to incentivize universities to undertake measures for promoting carbon neutral campuses, green spaces, energy efficient and environment friendly green campuses in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. Every state should have at least one shareable world class university with world class central library. The industry institute interaction should be based on private public partnership model. There are a large number of unskilled, labor intensive jobs across the world that will be replaced by machines. There is a huge demand for a skilled workforce, particularly involving computer science, data science, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, mathematics, in addition to multidisciplinary knowledge and skills across sciences, humanities, and social sciences. Adverse climate changes, alarming pollution deterioration contributed by increase in population, rapid urbanization and industrialization worldwide has shifted the focus to meet the ever-rising demand of world's energy, water, food and sanitation, generating demand for skilled labor workforce and particularly in biology, chemistry, physics, agriculture, medicine, engineering and computer science, the artificial intelligence, data science, climate science and social science. 1 year of certificate, 2 year of diploma, a 3 year degree, and a 4 year multidisciplinary undergraduate program is a paradigm shift in the policy of higher education. Yoga, NSS, value based education, professional ethics, universal human values, games, sports, arts, music in undergraduate education ensures physically fit, mentally sound, emotionally stable, socially responsible, and spiritually inclined education for its students. The universities can offer two types of courses: ability enhancement courses and skill enhancement courses. This will improve employability of graduates, model public universities for holistic and multidisciplinary education on par with IITs and IIMs called MIRU, that is multidisciplinary education and research universities that will be set up in the coming years. The higher education institution shall move away from the high stakes examination towards continuous and comprehensive evaluation. High performing Indian universities will be encouraged to set up campuses in other countries, while selected countries will, like those from among the top 100 universities in the world, will be facilitated to operate in India. Technology is going to play an important role in the new education policy. Whether it is personalized teaching and our learning has to be implemented with that facilitates learning anytime, anywhere, anyone, any device, any amount, any language, and any media. Augmented reality, collaborative learning, blended learning, project based learning, creative learning, flipped classroom learning will help in implementation of the 4-year multidisciplinary graduate program. Internet of Things, wireless, machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data, and blockchain technologies should be extensively utilized for integrated learning approach. We do not get that physical experience and hands-on experience through online courses. The online courses cannot replace physical learning. There is a need to balance between intrinsic intelligence, emotional intelligence, and artificial intelligence. The digital revolution has brought in convergence of geography, culture, language, curriculum, knowledge, skill, information, and data. We can increase the gross enrollment to enrollment ratio in higher education, including vocational education, from 26.3% now to 50% by 2035 with the use of technology. We can call it by any version: digital education, digital evolution, digital revolution, digital information, digital transformation, digital intoxication, digital efficacy, digital toxification, or a digital trauma or a digital divide. The SWAYAM platform should also host part-time diploma courses providing students a holistic learning experience and promotion of interdisciplinary learning. The new education policy, national education policy, upholds the true essence of the institution and individual, philanthropy and government funding. It is the time for everyone to join hands, minds, and art to make it a reality. The institution must be funded from one third of grants should come from the government banks and consortiums, one third grant from corporate social responsibility, and internal revenue generation philanthropist and alumni. One third from tuition fees to meet huge investment of 6% GDP in education. We can start National Education Bank by investing 10,000 crores to develop digital infrastructure in schools. These banks can fund the institutions to develop infrastructure with minimum interest rate. The National Research Fund, public institutions, corporate bodies, and government institutions should fund research and innovation and IPR. The stakeholders' consultation and drawing timelines are very much necessary for this policy to succeed. While bottom-up approach is required or top-down approach for efficient implementation, a model act, statutes, and regulations should be immediately framed and circulated to all states for uniform implementation. We need to identify 100 autonomous government institutions in the country immediately. At least 50% of the learners through the school and higher education system will have exposure to vocational education by the year 2025. There will be at least one large multidisciplinary institution in one or near every district by 2030. The system of affiliated colleges will gradually be phased out. The present nomenclature, such as deemed to be university, affiliating university, affiliating technical university, unitary university, will be done away with and replaced by university in the next 15 years, that is 2035. All the higher educational institutions shall be multidisciplinary institutions with 3,000 or more students by the year 2040. And to conclude, the new education policy envisages holistic education and empowerment with employability. The proof of the pudding is in its implementation. The state government should come out with a document for implementation for NEP suited to the state needs. The state government should bring in all the administrative and legislative measures necessary for effective implementation of NEP in the next 1 year. There are formidable challenges in the implementation of NEP, but let us hope that India will rise from the ashes and regain its lost glory. It is like Magna Carta of 1215, June 15, and it is the Bhagavad Gita of the modern Bhagavad Gita and the new education policy, and the Bhagavad Gita can be on the same platform today if Bharat has to become a Vishwaguru in the near future. I thank the authorities, Vivekananda Education Society, its management, and also Shaila, my student, And I've been very happy to be with Professor Sandeep Shastri today to share the platform to address this August gathering. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, Professor Sandeep Shastri, for sharing the dais with us. Namaskara.
So thank you. No, so thank you very much, sir, for your inspiring words. Now I request Professor Chandramma, convener VKIT IIC, to welcome today's resource person, Dr. Sandeep Shastri, sir.
Yes, good morning, sir. Once again, I will. Once again, I will to present or introduce our resource person, Dr. Sandeep Shastri, sir. Dr. Sandeep Shastri, sir, is a Vice Chancellor designate of Jagran Lake City University, Bhopal. Dr. Shastri prefers to describe himself as a teacher by instinct, researcher by choice, trainer by passion, and above all, a lifelong learner. Dr. Shastri research.
Turn off the video, Chandrama. Dr. Shaila, can you hear me? That's why you have to take a good connection and a good application. It's not a reliable one. The band is not that efficient. Dr. Shaila. Sandeep Shastri sir, you can hear me?
Yes, sir. I am able to hear you. I am able to hear you.
ನಾವಿಬ್ರು ಹೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ವಲ್ಲ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂತ. ಚಂದ್ರಮ್ಮ, put off the video and then you have to take a proper connection. See, you should not
Yes,
do
sir.
like this. ಬೇರೆ ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಎಷ್ಟು ಅಪ್ಲಿಕೇಶನ್ಸ್ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ, ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡೋದ್ ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇದನ್ನ ತಗೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಿಲ್ಲ.
Sir, it is okay, no, sir.
We're not able to hear you. Yes,
Switch off
start.
the video, Andrew.
Your voice is breaking. Your voice is breaking.
No, sir. Now is voice. Okay, okay. Yes, sir. Now, sir, it is audible, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
audible. ಮಾತಾಡಮ್ಮ.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
ಮಾತಾಡಿ.
ಕೊಡಿ ma'am ಅದು. Sir,
ಮಾತಾಡಿ.
it is audible, sir, now?
It's audible. Please speak.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So, Dr. Shastri. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, Dr. Shastri, sir, was an advisor on political party reforms in the Pacific Rim states to the UNIDF, advisor on governance reforms in Nepal for the World Bank, and an advisor on constitutional reforms and transition to democracy in Myanmar and South Sudan for the Forum of Federations. Dr. Shastri sir played a key role in drafting the Karnataka State Youth Policy by serving as chairman of the drafting committee of the said policy. Dr. Shastri sir has lectured extensively across the world and spoken at universities in more than 50 countries in all the 6 inhabited continents. He was chosen to participate in the International Visitor Program of the US government in 1995 and was a fellow of Salzburg Seminar and Salzburg Seminar on Federalism in 1993. He has also been Ford Foundation Fellow and Indo-Canadian Fellow. Dr. Shastri has been an adjunct professor at University of California, Berkeley, and taught there in the summer terms. We welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello.
Thank you, Dr. Shaila. Thank you, Dr. Chandraman. It's indeed an honor to share the platform with Dr. Venugopal, an old friend and somebody who I've been very close to right from the time we both were together teaching at Bangalore University. It's indeed a special privilege to talk about the national education policy, which is, I think, the main feature of all discussions in higher education today. The government has taken the initiative to bring in bold reforms in higher education to align higher education in India with the requirements of the 21st century. And I think it's important that all stakeholders do spend time reflecting on what this national education policy is all about. What I plan to do today as part of my presentation is to look at what I would call the philosophical foundations of the national education policy. I believe that this policy has certain very, very critical philosophical foundations. And if we are able to relate to those philosophical foundations, I believe that we can actually appreciate the main features that are present in the national education policy of 2020. And in order to outline the philosophical foundations of the national education policy, I would like to choose a particular route to be able to spell out the philosophical foundations of the policy. And I would do it in what I call the Nava Sutras, the 9 philosophical foundations of the new national education policy. I believe these Nava Sutras in important ways summarize the goals, summarize the objectives, summarize the purposes of the national education policy and the direction in which they want to take the Indian higher education system. So friends, I'm going to devote this session to dilating at length about what I would call these Nava Sutras or 9 elements. And I believe when I cover these 9 elements, I would be in important ways covering the major issues which the National Education Policy 2020 talks about. The first sutra of the National Education Policy for me is the fact that this is an extremely inclusive policy. If you read from page 1 to the last page of the National Education Policy, every page highlights some dimension of inclusiveness as part of its design. More specifically, I would say the inclusiveness of the National Education Policy is with regard to 3 P's what I call in point number 01. The inclusiveness is with regard to people, the inclusiveness is with regard to priorities, and the inclusiveness is with regard to projections. And let me spend a minute on each of these. When I say NEP 2020 is inclusive vis-a-vis people, I think the national education policy has something for everyone who wants to benefit from education. The national education policy has something for everyone who wishes to enter the portals of an educational institution, be it a school, be it a college, be it a university, whichever space a person wishes to go to be able to enhance her skills, to improve his understanding of issues. The national education policy has a space for all of them. Inclusiveness in terms of priorities. Friends, let's remember this is a country with great diversity. This is a country with great aspirations. And this is a country with multiple aspirations across the length and breadth of this vast expanse which we call Bharat. Now, this policy prioritizes, I would say, in important ways, all these aspirations through its flexibility and through its multi-track approach. Also, I would believe the national education policy is inclusive in terms of its projections. There are certain things which can be immediately done. There are certain things which can be done in the short run in 5 years. There are certain things which would require a little longer time to be able to achieve. So, inclusiveness in this policy is in terms of the people it reaches out to, is in terms of the priorities it upholds, and is in terms of the projection that it makes. Friends, let me move on now to the second of the 9 sutras. The fact that this policy seeks to be equitable, the fact that this policy seeks to be fair to all segments of society, the fact that this policy accepts the fact that India as a nation is still grappling with several dimensions of inequality, be it social, be it economic. And in a sense, the national education policy seeks to address this inequality. Now, those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, those who are at the base of the social structure, those who are at the disadvantaged part of the society, these are the social groups that the national education policy specifically prioritizes and focuses on their needs, their interests, and their aspirations. Friends, the famous principle that Mahatma Gandhi developed for this country, where he talked about Sarvodaya, and later on we talked about Antyodaya, let that light reach the last person, is something I think as a goal the national education policy tries to promote. So the fairness in its approach, the social justice focus that the policy has, and more importantly, friends, when I talk about equitable, I must bring in another element. For too long has this country prioritized different streams of education. Venugopal sir comes from the domain of engineering but has forayed into all domains. Venugopal sir, I'm sure, will agree with me when he says, while engineering is important, while medicine is important, maybe we are a society and a set of parents and students who have focused too much exclusively on medicine and engineering at the neglect of other domains, which I think are equally important to create a balanced and fair society. In a sense, I would believe the national Education Policy 2020 looks at all courses, all streams of knowledge with the same element of equity. So therefore, I think the second dimension or the second sutra which I would like to stress on is the equity sutra which this national education policy focuses on. Sutra number 3, the focus on quality. The national education policy recognizes that India needs to not only cater to large numbers, we also should make sure that quality is taken care of. So the national education policy does an important balancing. What Venugopal sir talked about, all these categorization of universities into public, private, central, state, deemed, unitary, all that is something that the national education policy seeks to do away with. And on the other hand, speaks of only threefold classification of universities. Research-intensive universities, teaching-intensive universities, and autonomous colleges. And friends, and this is something policymakers should keep in mind, this threefold distinction that the new economic, that the national education policy makes is not, and I'm underscoring the word not, it's not a categorization, but it is a classification. It is not creating a new hierarchy of research intensive at the top, teaching intensive next, and autonomous colleges at the bottom. I do not think that this is the intention of the national education policy. The national education policy wishes to keep all these three types of institutions at the same level. It's just a classification and not so much of a categorization. And I do hope and wish and pray that decision makers in the months ahead will actually keep this in mind and not make this threefold classification into a categorization. Because the moment you do that, you will defeat the entire purpose of the national education policy. When I talk of quality, I must also bring in the other two words. The national education policy talks about relevance. Are we sharing with young learners knowledge that is something that they can apply in the real world? Is there the bridging of the gap between the world of study and the world of reality? Is the world of reality something our world of study exposes learners to? And this, I think, is the dimension of quality that is emphasized so strongly in the national education policy. Friends, let me go to my fourth sutra, which is the sutra of sensitivity. I think the national education policy has rightly understood the pulse of the people of India, has rightly understood the aspirations of the people of India. Why do I talk about sensitivity in the national education policy? I think it is grounded in reality. The way the pre-primary education has been brought into the cluster of school education, I think it is a very, very important dimension of sensitivity. The way the national education policy, especially in higher education and higher education at the school level, focuses on skill development and the acquiring of different skills, I think demonstrates the focus on sensitivity. The fact that the multiple needs of learners is something emphasized by the national education policy. That we should not only cater to the brain, but we also should cater to the heart. We should understand the need for the emotional stability of learners. We must take care of the psychological safety of learners is, I think, something that the national education policy emphasizes, and therefore the sensitivity I see towards the education process, in which I will bring in one more point, friends. the national education policy rightly emphasizes the centrality of the role of the teaching community in bringing about any transformation. Now, making the teacher the heart of the education process is something that the NEP envisages. My only wish is that there is no slip between the cup and the lip, that what is envisaged as the centrality of the teacher, what is envisaged as the increased social respectability of the teacher, that society increasingly respects the role of the teacher. I only hope and wish that this becomes a reality and does not get caught in the middle of the bureaucracy, rules and regulations as we have seen in the past. I'm hoping that the implementers of this policy will take this particular dimension which is stressed with the level of seriousness that it deserves. Friends, let me move on to my fifth sutra, which I think is again the core of the national education policy, the focus on interdisciplinarity. One of the dreams of the national education policy is we should not have single faculty universities. We need to recognize the meaning of the word university. The universe is central to a university. The multidisciplinary nature of a university is something that the national education policy stresses. Not only does it stress that, it also focuses on the multidisciplinarity of learning. We have got so caught up in our silos. We have got so caught up in our specializations. We have got so caught up in our micro disciplines that we sometimes lose sight of the larger picture. One thing that the national education policy. So can I go back to my presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Continue, sir. Continue. So you can start, sir.
Okay. So as I was discussing, friends, the fifth sutra of the policy, which I'd like to emphasize, is interdisciplinarity, which this policy focuses on. And by interdisciplinarity, holistic learning at all levels. And I think a very, very important focus on interdisciplinarity in research is something that the national education policy talks about. It will be important to see how this interdisciplinarity in research is actually going to be introduced. Venugopal sir should correct me if I'm wrong. The problem today of looking at interdisciplinarity is we try to bring in 4 or 5 subject experts, and each of the 4 or 5 subject experts speak about that subject from their perspective. And we think that that is interdisciplinarity. I beg to differ. I believe the focus should not be on getting in 4 or 5 disciplinary experts, but the focus should be taking a theme, taking a particular theme, let me say the theme of sustainable development, or let me say the theme of green technology. When you are talking of sustainable development, is it possible to look at sustainable development from the research progress in several disciplines? Every discipline brings into the study of sustainable development their purpose, their vision, their findings, their learnings. For me, that is the true interdisciplinary approach that, as I see it, the national education policy seeks to ensure. Let me, friends, move to my last 4 sutras now. Synergy. Synergy, I think, is a critical sutra that the national education policy talks about. The fact that the national education policy says we need to integrate together our undergraduate, postgraduate, and our research programs. Again, they operate so much in silos. Our PhD scholars often do not dialogue with our postgraduate students. Our postgraduate students are often disconnected from our undergraduate students. The national education policy talks about bringing all these three levels together, because you will be bringing together talent, capacities, experiences at different levels, and you will be bringing in a research culture right from undergraduate education. So the synergy which the education policy talks about bringing together your undergraduate, your postgraduate, and your PhD programs is, I think, again, a very, very laudable move. They also talk about a talent pool. At a local level, can we bring about a talent pool? Can we pool together talents and resources that we have in a local area and allow students across the board to be able to benefit from that? I think the fact of online learning and 1/3 of learning being online learning is something that would be one way of bringing about this synergy. Today, if I teach at a particular university, it's not that my students at that university alone can benefit. If I offer online courses, this benefit can go to people across the board. And in some senses, that is the talent pool that we are looking at. That is the type of synergy that the new education policy is looking at. The national education policy is very much grounded in rooting education to the Indian reality, the rootedness of education. It's in this context I am a little wary when people say that India does not rank in the first 100, in Indian universities do not figure in the top rankings of the world. Now, my question is, are global rankings defined in terms of certain global perspectives which are not relevant in some ways to the social reality, cultural reality, economic reality of this particular society? Is it time that we stop aping the West in terms of standards and start looking at quality which is relevant to our society? I think when people in India speak about a Atmanirbhar Bharat, I often wonder whether you can really translate Atmanirbhar into English as self-reliant. I think self-reliant is a very, very unhappy or very, very inadequate translation of Atmanirbhar. Atmanirbhar for me is actually going back to your roots, looking at your identity, looking at what is the wealth from your knowledge and from your knowledge systems. Now that rootedness is something that the national education policy very, very clearly drives towards. And friends, let me come to my final two sutras. This is a policy which focuses on flexibility. Flexibility is a very important feature of the national education policy. Flexibility in terms of the threefold classification of universities: research intensive, teaching intensive, and autonomous colleges. You have given them the flexibility in terms of what they would like to prioritize. I go back to saying, friends, this is not a categorization of higher, middle, and lower. This is just a classification to bring in flexibility as to what they would like to prioritize on. I think flexibility has been brought into our undergraduate program also, where you can exit at the end of 1 year with a certificate, at the end of the second year with a diploma, at the end of a third year with a degree, and at the end of the fourth year with an honors degree. I think this is an excellent idea. where students can have a credit bank and place in that bank the credits that they earn and over time earn a degree. But I would just add a small word of caution here. We have borrowed this multiple points of entry and exit in undergraduate education from what is practiced in the West. Now, in the West, it works reasonably well because culturally there, once a young person crosses the age of 18, he or she then becomes self-dependent. They don't rely on their parents for the funding of their education. So therefore, this multiple entry, multiple exit makes sense in that Western context, where you study, go out and work for some years, save money, then come back and study, then go back and work. So that is possible. But friends, I want you to reflect on the Indian cultural context. In a typical lower middle class, upper middle class family in India, we would often tell the child, complete your education fully and then go for a job. Complete your entire education, at least your undergraduate education, complete it at one stretch and then go for a job. We are there to support you. We are there to fund you. We are there to finance you. We are there to look after you. In the current Indian socio-cultural setting, given the focus on education, families generally encourage, if they can afford it, encourage the child to go through the whole process of higher education at a stretch. So I'm just wondering whether this westernized concept of entry, exit will really fit into the Indian socio-cultural framework. And I think a little more reflection on that would, I think, be important and necessary. Which brings me to the last sutra, friends, that education is a lifelong learning. Friends, here I would make a distinction between education and learning. We go for formal education to a few years to an institution, but learning is a lifelong process. Learning is something that never ever ends. And I think the national education policy underscores this point very, very strongly. That the approach that needs to be adopted towards learning is that learning is a lifelong process. Venugopal sir would agree that as administrators, we learn every day through the interactions that we have with people. Our own understanding of administration is enriched by the experiences we have, and every day we learn something new. In my 4 decades of teaching, I have realized that there is so much that I have learned from my students in the classroom. I often say, in 40 years, more than 20,000 students have allowed me to learn with them in their classroom. I don't think I have taught anybody. Now, learning as a process goes on. Be it a teacher, be it a student, be it an administrator, be it a researcher. Now, this approach to learning, this attitude towards learning is, I think, what the national education policy tries to outline. A few years ago, I met my school principal, who is today close to 80. And even at this age, he has not retired. He is still the vice chairman of a school trust. And one day I happened to go to meet him. Somebody was sitting in his room and asked him, Mr. Arora, when are you finally going to retire? I was intrigued by the question and was inquisitive to know what would be the answer my principal gives. my principal gave a immediate answer which was so educative to me. My principal looked at that person and said, retire? When did I start working to retire? Last 80 years I have been learning. I never started working. Now, I think I keep him always in my mind when I look at the philosophy of the National Education Policy. That do we look at the process of learning as a lifelong experience, and we make the distinction between learning and education. So friends, those were the 9 elements I wanted to highlight, and I would like to stop here and would be very happy to respond to any queries or questions that the audience may have to the issues I have raised. Thank you so much, Dr. Shaila. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one of the participant is asking, in the new education policy, will research be given more prominence and academic is going to be very much minimized, teaching? That is the question they're asking, sir.
See, it's very convenient when we use the word NEP 2020. Is it national education policy or is it new education policy? I was always confused. When I finally found out it actually is National Education Policy 2020. And the moment you say 2020, it becomes new education policy. So that's an interesting aside. Now, this was a very important question. Does the National Education Policy prioritize research or does it prioritize teaching? Now, how do I look at it? I don't think NEP 2020 prioritizes research or teaching. NEP 2020 believes both research and teaching are critical to higher education. If I could put it in an analogy, I think the National Education Policy believes that research and teaching are like the 2 eyes of higher education. And I don't think any of us can say that the right eye is more important than the left eye or the left eye is more important than the right eye. Honestly, the friend who asked this question, this is one of my fears also. And I mentioned this as part of my presentation. When you talk about this universities as research intensive, teaching intensive and autonomous, I was mentioning 2 days back when Good Governance Day was observed in the banquet hall and I was one of the speakers there, and I was lucky that the Deputy Chief Minister was present there. I made an appeal. I pleaded with the Deputy Chief Minister that this 3-fold classification should not become a hierarchy, that research intensive on top, teaching intensive next, and then right at the bottom, you have the autonomous colleges. And the Deputy Chief Minister nodded his head and accepted and endorsed the point I was making. This is just a classification and not a categorization of high, medium, and low. Now, I think what this policy tries to argue, again, it looks very ideal. I don't know whether it will be practical. What it tries to argue is some people would prefer, and some institutions would prefer to focus on research. Let them give more time to research and less time to teaching. But that does not mean they are superior. Some people would like to focus on teaching. So do more of teaching, little less of research. But that does not make you inferior. What I think the policy argues is, if you're doing research, you require an outlet for that research through teaching. I have often found this, that when I'm doing my research and when I'm doing my data analysis, sometimes the answers to the questions that my data is telling me, which I could not find out, In a discussion in the classroom, I was able to take it out and tease it out of what my students told. So research sometimes requires an outlet through teaching. Somebody who does teaching requires also to do research to enrich his or her understanding of a theme and to take that knowledge back to the classroom. So in a sense, the policy argues you need research and teaching. You may do more of one, but you cannot ignore the other. You cannot say, I will only do research and no teaching. Or you cannot say, I will only do teaching and no research. A lifelong educator will have to do both. And my own view, it does not privilege one over the other. It does not privilege research over teaching or teaching over research. But I have the same apprehension that you have, that policy implementers should not keep it as a categorization rather than as a simple classification. Yes, Shaila, if there's any other question, I'll be happy to take it.
So as of now, they have not sent. We have told them to send offline.
Right.
Will any further queries? I'll contact you in person and let them know the solutions for the problems.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir,
Thank you so much.
for your very informative talk on the education policy, which was very much essential because we had some confusions and all, which you really cleared during your presentation.
Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, sir. And on behalf of Janata Education Society and Vivekananda Institute of Technology, I thank Sandeep Shastri sir and Venugopal sir for being a part of this webinar and giving a very good orientation session by Sandeep Shastri sir. Really, it was excellent, sir.
Thank you so much.
So I thank all the participants for attending the orientation session on the National Education Policy. Thank you, one and all. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.